listeners, how did you get into what you do today and where you are today?
How?
Were you this kid that grew up knowing that this is what you would do with your life?
Yeah, I did. I grew up, um, so I come from a military family in Pakistan.
Okay.
Okay. So growing up, I was always into, my parents had retired from the military by the time, well, when I was very, very young. So no, I don't remember them being in uniform, but we lived in the army areas, right? Always lived in the army areas. So I was always fascinated by army things, right? Uniform things. That was always a fascination for me. So when I got to um, Canada, which was my family migrated in 2000, went back to Pakistan in 2001. But then I came back alone a few years later. I was still in high school. And when, high school was coming to an end, I was like, okay, now what? Now what do I do with my life, right? Like, um, asking the parents, they wanted me to be a doctor, right? I was like, I don't want to be a doctor, right? So, um, now what? I remember I was sitting with my buddy and we used to like me and my classmate. We used to live in the same building. So I'm sitting in his room.
Mhm.
His name is Mo. I gotta say that, right? And Mo and I are sitting, and I'm like, man, I don't know what to do. And he goes, why don't you go into criminal justice, right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, what the hell is that? And he goes, well, so and so is doing it, and he plans on becoming a police officer. I'm like, cool. I'll do that, right? I'll do that. One thing led to another. I ended up in a school in Michigan, and that's where I went to school for Bachelor's of Science in Criminal Justice. And plan was to become a cop,
Mhm.
right? Um, but when I was in my program, one of my profs brought in a um, an ex-inmate into our class, and this guy, still remember his story. He was uh, 22 years before this. He had found out that his dad had hired a hitman to kill his mother. He found out about it, and he went and killed that hitman, right? And he ended up in the prison system um, for life, right? Then he got out in 22 years, and he came to speak in our class and all that stuff. Anyhow, and that was corrections class, and so listening to his story, then we had a book that we had to read for that class, and I read that book, and I was fascinated with the life inside, right, like behind the fence. Well, you know what? This is something I want to do, right?
Mhm.
So I graduated school. In the back of my head, I also wanted to be in the army, right? So I graduated school, but I wasn't a citizen. I wasn't a Canadian citizen, still a Pakistani citizen, and I moved out to BC in 2010. And doing this job, that job. Eventually, I landed a job with a fire department. And you know what? Now I put on the uniform, and now I freaking fell in love with it. Right? Like
Mhm.
that's what I loved. Um, kept applying to different agencies. Somebody told me about correction services. And not that somebody told me about it, I knew about it. It's just, that final push came and I
Yeah.
applied. And um, when that final push came, applied, they accepted me. And they said, okay, you're going to, it took a while. By this time, sorry, I had gotten my citizenship by this time in 2011, I want to say,
Mhm.
or 2012 maybe. But then they shipped me off to Saskatoon for training. Did that, then they posted me to Edmonton, and that's how I ended up in
Oh, wow.
Alberta. Posted me to Edmonton Max Institution. I was there for a while. Great. Um, it was great. It was a great experience, right? Now in the past, I've always said that I loved that place, and I did, right? But as I mature a little bit, I have to say this, that that place also has, whatever you see at Edmonton Max, you don't see it anywhere else, right? So, um, it has done a lot of damage to a lot of good people, a lot of good officers, right? And I want to recognize that place, it's not even that it's not for everybody, but there are people out there that have given their lives to that place, right? And it's crazy.
What do you mean
It,
by damage, though? Exactly.
Psychological damage,
Yeah.
even physical damage, right? Like mental damage, physical
Hmm.
damage. Um, for lack of better terms, it's a very active site. When I say very active site, I mean you're dealing with a lot of things. It's a maximum security institution, right? So it's a maximum security institution. So you're dealing with a lot of different people, a lot of different personalities, a lot of different, people who are not, they're not there because they were followers of the law, let's say, right? Like our clientele. And then the officers that come in there, the things you see in any first response job, any uniform job, I don't think that a human mind is supposed to see that. I don't think we are built to see some things, and then and you get into first response world, and you know
Hmm.
it's a shock. No matter whether you could love it, 100% you could love it, but end of the day, that's not something that you were meant to see, meant to your mind to grasp and come to terms with it. And it has done damage to a lot of very good people, right?
Hmm.
And we have to recognize that 100%. For me personally, I loved it, right? For me personally, every day was great. Um, yes, it was very active. I liked it that way. It made the day go by fast, right? Like all was good. Um, However, one day now, this I'm going into the laying of the boots on the ground foundation. Uh, Not that that day I decided that this is what I was going to do, but um, one day, so we used to work in units, right? Like six of us working the same unit, um, same days on, same days off, all that stuff, right? Two of my best friends, out of the six, two were revolving, right? Like always, new guys coming in, getting trained,
Hmm.
leaving. Four of us were permanent, right? Like four of us were like we were the squad. We were the live and die together kind of people. Um, Two of them did not show up one day, right? It was April 1st something. Um, Two of them didn't show up one day because they were out at a concert the previous night or something. And that day, we ended up having a very major incident, which was a hostage taking, and we dealt with it. Um, I dealt with it front and center, and um, you know, took the parties involved, took one of the parties out to the hospital, blah 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 blah. My shift ended up being almost 24 hours, right? Because of how, and I'm not saying this was the most gory stuff that we have seen, but it was top 10, right? Like that I've seen in service. It was nasty. Um, Dealt with it all good. I came back from the hospital to the institution um, early in the morning. I had been on shift since 6:45 in the morning. Incident happened around 2:30ish, and I got back to the institution at like maybe like 4 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m.,
Right.
something like that, right? So I did my report, everything. I'm leaving, and I stopped by the manager's office, and I go, "Hey, man, I'm just gonna because my shift is supposed to start again at 6:45, right? I'm just gonna go home, shower and stuff. I'll be back in a bit." And he goes, "Well, you could take a day off, right? Like that's fine. You're leaving now. Of course, we don't expect you to be back. Technically, you're supposed to have 8 hours off before between shifts." I was like, you know what? No, I'll be back, right? I'll be back. So I went home, showered, changed. maybe took a nap, uh, got back to work. Only reason I went back to work that day, because yes, I could have stayed at home, was remember how I said that my buddies were not
Yeah.
at work? Now I knew that my buddies were gonna be at work, right? My buddies were gonna be at work,
Mhm.
and those were the people that I wanted to be around, right? I didn't want to be home alone. I wasn't married at the time. I was a single guy. I didn't want to uh, be home alone after such a long incident and big incident.
Of course. Yeah.
So I wanted to go and be with my friends, and I went.
Mhm.
We talked it out, and everything was good, right? That day, I was part of the peer support team at our work, right? And I'd done many peer supports, but you know what? I don't think I personally understood the importance of it until that day, right? Like I didn't understand the importance of the service that I was providing as part of the peer support team, right? I didn't understand it because I didn't need it until then, right? And I didn't do it like it wasn't an official critical incident stress management. It was just me going in to talking to my buddies. They weren't part of the peer support team. They were just my buddies, my unit mates, right? Like my brothers. So went in, whatever. It was back in my head. It was good. Like talking to my buddies, it was good. That's what I needed. Anyhow, um, a few years went by. I got married. Things changed. My wife is from Calgary, so we decided to move back this way to Calgary from Edmonton. And I transferred to another institution. Now, when I got to that institution now, and at the same time, I got promoted. Like I worked behind the fence for maybe 2 months before I got sent away
Okay.
for
Yeah.
a promotion course, which was a 3 month course out in PEI. And I went out there, did my course, came back, and I was promoted. Right now, I was promoted. I got into a um, a position where you worked. I wouldn't say alone, in a partnership, right? But not in a unit, right? Like you weren't working in a unit. Now I was a training officer, right? There are only two, three training officers per site, right?
Right.
Like every site has. Or you're traveling around the country training recruits, right? So I was doing a lot of that. Um, One thing that I started missing was that camaraderie, right? Like the people that were around me, um, people you could, kind of swear here.
Yeah.
Yeah, people you could shoot shit with, right? Like, um, just, that brotherhood was gone for me, right? Like,
Mhm.
I don't say. So, one thing I would like to bring up so I don't forget it later is it's very important for people to understand that your mental health issues might not come from something bad happening. They might come from something good happening. Something good like promotion, something good like you're moving into a position where now you're higher up. Remember, higher you get, the more lonelier it is, right? So um, you get into a position where now you are not with your people, and
The
all of a
ground
sudden,
level, the crew. Yeah.
yeah, and now you're losing the brotherhood, and now that has a lot of effect on mental health of people, right? Like for me, it did, right? And then the old things from that incident started coming up, like the incident that I already mentioned, and other things started coming up because now you're alone. Now you can't talk to anybody about these things, right? Like now what, right? I tried seeking help. I tried seeking help. Went to you know, different programs, psychologists, therapists, all that. Nothing was working. Nothing was working. Um,
Mo, just for
and
the listeners, what happened to you though? Like when did you realize there's something not right within me? Was it your behavior changing? Was it you not wanting to be around people anymore? Your temperament was different. What was going on where you realized I'm not right. I'm not okay. Something's wrong with me.
uh, I'll tell you exactly when I knew that something was wrong. I show up to my new place and remember the 2 months that I spent inside,
Hmm.
okay, spent behind the fence. Uh, Now during those 2 months, I had, um, Now this place is the new my new job, um, or my new location, I guess. We dealt with a lot of sex offenders. Okay. I was coming from not a sex offense world. I was coming from, other crimes, gang crimes, all that kind of world to now sex offense world, right? And I was working the intake unit, right? So new inmates that are coming in, I was the one who was, doing their paperwork and stuff. First inmate comes in, and I'm just trying to think how much can I go into detail. Inmate comes in and he had some heinous sex offenses. Well, not, yeah, heinous sex offenses on his record, right? Against family, against grandchildren, let's say, right? Not let's say, it was against his grandchildren. One of the reasons we moved down here to Calgary for me was, uh, hey, my family, I want whenever we start a family, my wife and
Yeah.
I, whenever we start having kids, I wanted them to be close to grandparents, right? My parents were still not here. I was gonna move my parents to Calgary area. My wife's family was here. I didn't grow up around any family, so I wanted my kid to grow up around family. So I saw that, and that was the first time ever that I brought work home. I was quiet at home. I didn't say much. And now this is like my first week on the job, right?
Yeah.
And we have just moved here. My wife is starting school and she is not loving it. And I'm starting this new place. And now I'm all of a sudden quiet. And, she thinks that I hate her for moving us down here and blah, blah. And, because not that she moved us down here, but, she wanted to be here. She did not, I could tell that she did not want to be in Edmonton. Um, she's thinking all this. And third day after I had read this file, remember at this time I didn't have a kid. Third day after, third day after I read this file, I'm going to work. I'm on my motorcycle. I'm going to work. And I'm like, man, I hate this, right? Like, what the hell, right? Like, why am I here, right? Like, I don't. So I didn't
Hmm.
go to work that day. I booked it. I went straight to Edmonton to talk to my buddies again,
Yeah.
right? I went because I didn't have those kind of buddies in
Right.
at my new job yet. So I rode straight to Edmonton and I wanted to chat with my buddies. Anyhow, thing came and thing went all good. I got into my new job again. Things stayed in the back of my head, like those, sex offenders and this and that and blah, blah. Fast forward. Now, this is 2019. Okay. September 2020, my daughter was born. Right.
Mm.
Always wanted to be a girl dad. Always, I love being a girl dad. Always wanted to be one. I get a girl. Awesome. My parents have moved here and all, and switch flips. Switch flips where I go, I cannot trust the grandparents around my daughter anymore because of the guy that I had dealt with. Um, well, now what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
And um, I really hope my parents are not gonna see this. But one day I my daughter was I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months old. She could sit. I remember that. So 6 months old maybe. So all of this was in the back of my head and nobody talked to,
Mhm.
right? Like my buddies are not here anymore, right? My
Yeah.
buddies are not here anymore. By this time I'd started, of course, my new job, my new position as a trainer. So I don't have the camaraderie within the units, all
Mhm.
that stuff. So I don't have anybody really to talk to. And I go, um, uh, my dad is visiting. My daughter's there. My wife's gone out somewhere, and I'm like, hey, I'm just gonna go. I'm just gonna work out quickly at my garage, right? So I go to my garage and I start working out. And every 30 seconds, after every set, pretty much, I am coming in just making sure, hey, everything good, right? But in the deep inside me, I knew why I was checking. I knew I was checking because there was a grandfather out there who had molested his own grandchildren. At one point, I was coming into the house and my hand is shaking as I'm reaching for the knob. My hand is just shaking as to what the hell am I going to see on the other side of that. Now, that happens, and I go, you know, whatever, the day is over. But that night, now I'm mad at myself for thinking that. Um, Another issue with, I'm sure everybody has it, but some people say it out loud that I have I'm a visual person. So I have this video running in my head. Um, I look at, I'm like, how can I think that about my dad, right? Straight up. So I'm mad at myself. Um, a week goes by, whatever, nothing really happens. A week goes by and I'm quiet, right? Like I don't share my stuff, right? So I was
Yeah.
quiet. And we are going somewhere, and my wife is in the back seat with the baby, and I'm driving, and we are going somewhere. And my wife says something, nothing major, right? Like something very minor. Um, and I got irrationally upset. Okay. I got more upset than I should have been. Honestly, I shouldn't have been upset at all. When I look back at it, it should have been like, whatever,
Hmm.
right? Like one of those blow it off kind of one. But I lost it. I started yelling, started losing my mind to a point where my daughter started crying, and I had to park the car and get out of the car. Right? Like I'm losing my mind. That was the first time I ever lost control. First time ever I lost control. And that was the day I realized that I needed help. Right? Like I needed to go get help. Um, there were a whole lot of other things that, I was compensating with. Like I know, we look at the positive things in life and we think that person must be doing okay, right?
Hmm.
If they're not doing anything destructive, right? To cope with things. But end of the day, we are avoiding, whether we are avoiding with drugs or we are avoiding with alcohol or whatever, like there's some underlying issue that we are dealing with, and we are avoiding it by numbing it with alcohol or with drugs. I was numbing it with making myself super duper busy, right? Like super duper busy was uh out of nowhere. I was like, I used to hate school. When I was in school, I used to hate it, right? It's like I'm gonna start a master's degree, right?
Hmm.
I want to start that. I want to start other things, right? Like doing other things, just making myself busy, just avoiding what was happening in front of me, right? Um, so eventually, that was the time I started seeking help, like going out seeking help. Um, During this time, even before this, I had I had reached out to Boots on the Ground that is in Ontario, and I said, "Hey, I saw your website and all, and I like what you guys do, and I want to do it, right? Like I want to volunteer." And they said, "Well, we don't operate in Alberta, right?"
For the listeners, what is Boots on the Ground in Ontario first and foremost?
So Boots on the Ground is a peer support helpline for first responders by first responders, right? At that time, it was first responders by first responders. Now it is for military as well. But it was for first responders by first responders. It was a 1-800 type of a number that anybody could call, and it's anonymous and confidential, and you just call it and you just talk to somebody, right? And
Mm.
you could remain anonymous if you wish. So I liked their model, and I wanted to volunteer. I wanted to be a call taker, and they said, well, we don't operate in Alberta. So that was that. That was the end of that. That was 2019-ish, right? That was the end of that.
Yeah.
All good. Moved on from that,
Hmm.
and When I would try to seek help, nothing was really working.
Hmm.
Um, it came to a point where I seriously considered going back to Edmonton because I knew I was deteriorating and it was not good for my family. It was not um, good for anybody, right? I tried my best staying away from any self-medication, right? And yeah, so I just, kept on going. And then um, eventually, the boots on the ground stuff stayed in the back of my head. But I was like, okay, I'm not gonna wait for them to come to Alberta. I'm gonna bring it to Alberta myself, right? And then that's the next
Hmm.
phase, I guess. I'll get to that in a bit. Um, During this time, I kept looking at things of what the hell was wrong with me, right? Because I wasn't jiving with anybody long enough
Yeah.
for me to continue on the thing. And in my master's program, I came across um, one one class was about health issues and military veterans and stuff, right? And I read about it, and one of the things that was in there was mental injury or moral injury, right? Now, moral injury, as I understood it, was your morals say one thing, but you have to do something else, right? Um, Dilemma, if you want to call it, ethical dilemma, if you want to call it that, right? Whatever it is. But moral injury was what I was like, okay, yeah, you know what, this makes sense because my morals say a certain thing about dealing with sex offenders. I can't do that. My job asks me to do something else. So my morals have been injured in that, right? So I understand where this is coming from, right? Uh, and I talked to a few other people who
Hmm.
were like, I knew who were struggling with different things, but they didn't know what it was. I'm like, hey, here, study this, right? Study moral injury a little bit. And then when they did, most of them were like, yep, that makes sense. That makes absolute sense, right? So I wish we would recognize that a little more, moral injury a little bit more. But because you know what, we have all these other I's, right? TBI and OSI and this and that. Well, why not have a
Hmm.
thing in our thing that's MI, moral injury, right?
Moral injury.
Um, should be in there. But anyhow, um, so yeah, that's the long and short of my little bit of my professional background, and then how boots on the ground came into being. And boots on the ground is a different chapter. So, uh, good transition point. If you have any other
Absolutely.
question about it,
Yeah.
yeah.
I just have a question for you. You've seen evil and you've seen good. What sets them apart in human beings? Because you've seen the darkest of people. Is there good in them still?
You know what? The normal people that are out there, right? It bothers me to this day how um, ignorant they are as to how much evil there is. That's a dark side of people who work in my line of work is we look at the world very differently. We look at the world from, hey, no, your kid could be your kid could be kidnapped and done very evil things
Mm.
to by honestly somebody that you never expected, right? So, is there good in the world? Yes, there's good in the world, right? But uh, you just never know who is it that's gonna turn. Because you know what? The people who are bad don't come with warning signs, right? People who are going to do something, evil people, before the first time they do something evil, there's no, a warning label on them that, hey, this person is gonna do something evil, right? The particular example that I used was literally anybody's grandpa. Your grandpa, my kid's grandpa was another guy, was just another guy, right? just another old man. You know, you would not you would not expect anything of them. Of them. Um, so my world, and I'm sure the world of many others who have seen the things that I have seen, is similar, where we are very suspicious of everything and everyone.
Are you still that
Uh,
way?
am I still that way? Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm still that way.
So you're guarded, and I don't think it comes from a point of being naive or paranoid. I think this is reality. You've seen this. You've
Hmm.
seen evil.
Hmm. When um my dad, if or my parents, if they're watching my kid, right, and they send me a cute video of my kid, and my kid is, not wearing a shirt or something, I am very mad about it because, for them, it's them sending a cute video of something. For me, it's like, it's going to end up in your cloud, and your cloud is going to get hacked, and then some pedophile is going to have access to it, right? That's how my head works. Um, the typical, now it's such a cliche that it's, I don't even mention it anymore, but I will, is you go to a restaurant or something, you are sitting, with your back against the wall, and you could see the exit and you could see everybody. And if that's not the case, you're most uncomfortable, right? Yesterday, I was in Edmonton and I went to, I had some commitment and I went there, and it was in a mall, and I went and grabbed my food, and I could not find a goddamn corner seat anywhere, right? Like everything was taken. I went and ate in my car, right? I was like, no, I'm not sitting there, right? This was yesterday.
Mhm. What does that mean
Um,
for like someone that doesn't know what you're talking about here? What does that mean? Why is that the case? What are you looking for? Why do you want the corner? Why are you looking at the exit signs? What,
you're just always looking at any threat that may come, right? Like to you or to anybody else, right? Like you can't have your back exposed. You can't have your back exposed. I am alone in my house right now. I'm sitting in my house. I'm alone in my house. That door is closed, right? Because if that door opens at any point, right, I have time to react. If that door is left open, then my time to react
hmm.
decreases,
Okay.
right? And the only reason I'm sitting where I'm sitting is because I could see that door in the camera, right? And this is my own house, man,
Okay.
let alone anybody anywhere else, right? Um, so
No, it makes
it's
sense what you're saying
yeah,
now. I see. Okay.
yeah. So that's always how it goes, right? Like it's always uh you look at the world from a different angle. You're always watching, and always remembering. I have a thing for plates, right? For license plates, right? I just have a thing for it. And I know there's been times where um last year I was riding motorcycles with some of my friends, and we get to, Revelstoke, BC, and my friend is about to go out to, like, she's checking in into the hotel, and they ask for the license plate number, and she's about to go out, and I'm like, your license plate number is this. And right after, I'm like, how creepy do I sound? Like, she doesn't know her own license plate, but I know it, right? Because I was behind her, so I just have this thing for
Yeah.
plates, right? Like I look at plates, right?
Awesome.
Make and model and plates and all that stuff, right? Like that's just my thing to do. And I'm like, I should have just stayed quiet, right? But no, I was like, no, this is your plate, right? And anyhow, so those things, like you just observe things, right? Like you just
Yeah.
observe things. They're always there. And so those things, yeah, never leave, never leave you, right? Like your mind is always occupied. You're
Mhm.
always looking, always watching, always that, right? Um, yeah, there's that. Like right now, I'm like behind my computer is a window, and the curtain is cracked a little bit just because so I could look outside. There should not be anybody there, but if anybody ever is, I have some concerns, right? So yeah,
You're always on guard.
always, right? Always. And it's exhausting, man. I'm not even like that's
Mhm.
not even like it's exhausting.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah. Um, Now I have started seeking therapy, and now I feel like I'm in a place where I could seek therapy.
Yeah.
I have diagnosis of PTSD, and now I'm seeking therapy. But even then, it's like, it's always there.
I appreciate you being a part of Mentel.
Oh yeah, for sure. Thanks for that initiative, honestly.
And thank you for being a part of it, bro. Like we needed all of us to do this.
Yes, as men, buddy, we have gone too long without talking.
Mhm.
We have gone too long without talking. We think there's nothing that could bother us, right? Like as if um somehow that's going to take away from my manhood if I talk about it, right? Somehow that's a chip off my bravery. It's an attack on my bravery. No, no, no. We go out and we do many things for our families, right? Day and night, right? Whether we are law enforcement, whether we are first responders, whether we are civilians, anybody, men are supposed to go out and do these things for their families. And I'm not discounting any women right now, but really
We're talking
talking
about Mentel,
I'm
exactly.
talking about men right now, right? Men go out and do a lot of things, but men don't have people to talk to about, right? I was brave enough, like if I was talking about just military and first response worlds, because we are such alphas, right? All of a sudden, it is against some code of bravery to talk about stuff. No, no. My bravery, your bravery, anybody's bravery who's in the
Mhm.
first response world and military world was signing up to do these jobs, was signing up to go into the danger when everybody's running out. That was my bravery, right? Talking about it is not taken away from that at all.
Mhm.
Talking about it is actually part of that bravery. We need to lead the path in telling everybody, hey, listen, uh, we could talk about it, right? I had done this, I'd gone to this one seminar and there was this company that was doing it was in its, very, very young, very
Mhm.
intimate. They were doing a presentation and I can't remember where it was and what the company was called. And I really hope I could catch up with them one day. But they did a presentation where now they're going to do forensic sweeps of with families consent. They're going to do forensic sweep or any military personnel or any first responders who die by suicide, right? Just to see what is it that collect the data of what it was that they were going through in the last few. One thing that is very common amongst first responders, amongst military members, is the last person they call before they commit suicide, if that call goes unanswered, is not to their family, not to the spouse, not to their parents, not to their kids, not to tell their kids, I love you, take care of yourself. Not to their family to tell them that I love you, take care of yourselves. Not to their wives who, like the person who loves them the most. It's to their work buddy. It's to the buddy that they work with. Last, last hope is that I'm gonna call my buddy and I'm gonna talk to them. And if that call goes unanswered, it um, a lot of times, many times, end up in a suicide. Um, we are always there as men, taking care of our families, right? Like many suicides that happen away from home. And even if they are at home, every, or not every, but most times precautions are taken to minimize the damage. So the family doesn't have to clean up after you, right? All those things. Um, Minor things like taking care of business before, if
Mhm.
somebody has planned on offing themselves, right? They're gonna take care of all the business so the family doesn't have to go through stuff, right? Like I gotta take care of my family before I go. Even in the last act, they're looking out for their families, right? So it's time that we actually talk about stuff before it's too late. So Mantel, of course, was
Mhm.
I really appreciated it, and I've had um private conversations about the things with people like, our friends like Chris Gore
Yeah.
um,
Daniel.
and I've had, yeah, and Daniel, and we have had chats offline where it's like, what, what about this? There are things that, men would love to talk about, but that's going to cause a lot of disruption in families, even, right? So there are still things that we can't talk about, but there are things that we
It's a,
can.
it's a start. It's a layer, right, of
Yep,
the onion, and we're slowly peeling it off gently. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
exactly.
When it comes to buddy checks, thank you for doing that, by the way.
Of course,
Yeah.
bro. We gotta, you know what? I do over 70 buddy checks every first of the month, right? So if you haven't seen the trend yet, the trend is I will message you on the first of the month, right? Like now, yeah, people are starting to recognize it. It's like, oh, it's the first of the month, and sometimes it goes to second, and depending on how many. But normally I check on like about 70, at least 70 people, and not again, not just men, women,
Yeah.
men, everybody,
Hmm.
right? Um, even like people who are kids to me, let's say, right? Like my, yeah, they're kids to me. They're not kids, but they're kids to me, right? Um, because everybody has something going on, right?
It doesn't matter what age.
Yep. In my head, it is if I reach out to 70 people, and if each one of those reaches out to freaking 10, right? We're reaching out to a lot of people, right? And then they reach out to 10, and then they reach out to 10. You know what? Let's put this pyramid scheme to a good use. How's that, right?
Exactly.
So, let's do that.
Yeah.
And yeah, always, what does it take, man? Like every time I've messaged you, it's always been, hey, bro, how's it going? That's it,
Mhm.
right? Or I specify, because sometimes it's like, there were times that I noticed that people wouldn't get back to you because they think I'm you're starting a conversation to get somewhere, but they are not in the place to have a conversation with you, right? Like they're
No.
busy right now, they're at work right now, they're anything, like they're just not in the mood right
Mhm.
now. So now I've actually started adding buddy check time. How are you? Right? The answer to that is I'm good.
That's all
That's it.
you need to know. Yeah.
That's all. Right? Just so you know, I'm here if you need anything.
Mhm.
That's it. Right?
No, I like that.
Um, and that's all anybody needs, really.
Yeah.
We have too many things going on, man. We could always lean on each other. And you know what? Time and time again, it has been proven that we could all we have is each other. Nobody's coming to save us.
No.
No government is coming to save you. I don't care what anybody says, right? I don't care how many politicians or politicians at the top level at least, right? I'm actually more fan of our local politicians than higher ups, federal government. But um, no matter how many times they get up and say, um, "We are doing this for mental health," no, you're doing this for your votes, right? I don't want to get into that, but end of the day, all we have is each other. That's it's literally just a
It's
text.
so true. No one is coming though. We need to rely on each other, lean on each other. That's the only way we're going to learn, grow, and share.
Exactly. Right? Exactly. That's how we're gonna make sure that everybody's safe, everybody's there for their families, everybody's there for themselves.
As we transition over to Boots on the Ground, Alberta, thank you, first of all, for the invite to the inaugural event. That was
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, definitely wanted you to have there.
Yeah.
Wanted you to be there.
The
You
Billy
left before
Club,
I could say bye.
we were busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Billy Club, though, that's a spot.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It was thanks to the Calgary Police Association. It was yeah, they were very good to us.
Yeah.
They did not charge us for that place, actually.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, yeah, I gotta say that.
What
No, no.
is Boots on the Ground, Alberta, and how can people use the free service and also volunteer for it?
Boots on the ground is a peer support helpline for first responders, military members. That's what we advertise as, but it is open to anybody and everybody in North America could give us a call, right? Don't have to be a first responder, don't have to be a military member. Um, we will answer your phone. We will never turn anybody away. When you do call the number, which is 1-866-724-2684, when you call that number, uh, the person who answers the phone, right? One, they can't see your number. It shows up as uh, uh,
Private, anonymous.
private anonymous number, right? So nobody knows who's calling, and um, you just just talk. You don't have to tell us who you are, who you work for, what's your name. We don't ask for any of that. You want to tell us that? Sure, tell us that. You don't want to tell us that? We don't care, right? You want to talk about anything? Let's talk about anything, right? Um, we have had people call us who literally did not have anybody to talk to. That's it. And we talk to them, right? We have had people call us after major incidents, and like I said, we have people who called us just because they needed somebody to talk to that day, right? Um, the person who's answering the phone call is either a police officer, a correctional officer, a firefighter, a paramedic, a military member, um, nurse, or a dispatcher, emergency dispatcher, right? You have to be one of those. When I say police officer, I mean like any law enforcement, so sheriffs, peace officers, anything like that, right? Um, you have to be one of those to join us as a volunteer, okay? As a call taker, sorry, I should say. Um, so you have to be one of those professions, first response professions, to be a call taker, right? Retired or serving,
Mhm.
doesn't matter, right? When I say retired, I mean not end of service, but if you have done any time in first response world, you could be a call taker. And um, so you apply to us through our website, even BOTG-Alberta.com. Or you could send us a message, send us an email or anything like that. And you do this application process, you send us a resume and you send us a cover letter. When we first started, I was very skeptical of the cover letter resume. I'm like, we are asking first responders who are set in their careers to send a resume to do cover letters. And I was like, man, they're not gonna do that. We're not gonna have enough volunteers. I've gotten to a point where now, again, I've matured since last year when we were trying to start up, when the whole plan was coming together. Um, I've come to realize, you know what? We are in the business, not a business, but in the work of,
You have to operate it like a business.
well, we are in the work of saving lives of our brothers and sisters. And if you cannot be bothered to, you know, brush up your resume and your cover letter for it, we don't want you. Right? That's as simple as that. Once we go through the recruitment process and you're approved to join us, then we ask you to go get a police record check, right? Just to
Mhm.
cover all the bases. Doesn't matter. You could be a serving police officer, but yes, you have to go get a police record check done. You get a police record check done, and we have a copy of that. Um, then we bring you on, and then we send you on two trainings. One
Mm.
is a 2-day critical incident stress management training, assisting individuals in crisis. It is an accredited program from University of Maryland, and a second program called Assist, Applied Suicide Intervention Skills Training. That's a 2-day course as well, and we pay for it. Like our volunteers don't pay for anything. Okay, we pay for it. Normally, we are trying to make SISM online, right? Like we are offering it. Assist, sorry, we are offering it when we have trainer available. Assist, we plop you into other classes. So sometimes you need to travel for it. We'll pay for the travel. We'll pay for the hotels. We'll pay for all that, right? Like we will. You won't have to spend any money of your own to get the training done. Yes, would you have to take time off work? Yes, you would have to take time off work. Would we pay for your sick leave? No, we won't pay for your sick leave, right? Like you have to those things you would have to do. Um, and then we train you in our in-house training. That's one day. Okay. Our in-house stuff of policy, procedure, how you answer phones, what you can talk about, what you cannot talk about, all
Mhm.
that stuff, right? And then you are ready to go on and take a shift, right?
Wow.
And we ask for a total of like a 16-hour commitment throughout the month, right? We run 5 shifts a day, so 4 4-hour shifts, and then midnight shift is 8 hours, right? So 11 to 7 is 8 hours, but during the day it's like 7 to 11, 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., 1100 to 1500, 1500 to 1900, 1900 to 2300. So
You
you
don't have
got
to be in a physical location though. This is
this is on your own cell phones.
on your okay.
We have we have a system. You just go log into that, and now anybody who calls our number, the 1866 number, your phone is gonna ring, and it's gonna show up as uh
Boots on
un
the ground. Yeah. Or
unknown
unknown. Yeah.
unknown caller, right? And you just ask your own phone is working as normal. So if you're getting an unknown number caller, right, great chance is that somebody's calling boots to the ground line, right? But your own phone is still working.
Is
And
this in fire departments, in the locker rooms of police departments? Because I think it's a great initiative, not only just for the now, but it's being proactive instead
yeah,
of a little too late in the game.
yeah. So we have put our word, our information slips out as far and wide as we can, right? Are there in the locker rooms? Yes, they're in the locker rooms. Are they in some trash bins? Yes, some are in the trash bins.
That's the game.
Yeah, it's as simple as that, right? Like, um, we have nothing to gain from it. I am the president of the Alberta chapter. I brought it here. My hand on my heart, I could tell you that I don't get a single penny out of it. Okay,
Hmm.
we are
Volunteer. It's a
we
charity.
are we are a charity, registered charity with CRA. I don't get a single penny out of it. Not a single uh, volunteer at Boots on the Ground gets paid. Okay, every penny that
Hmm.
we raise goes back into the program, into trainings, into that like training, just training, right? Assist if we were to put a class together, just one class of like 15 uh, volunteers is going to cost us $3,600 to $4,200, right? SISM training. So far, we have been lucky, but that's about to change. But to find a location to put people in, and instructor fee is normally so far we've been lucky. Again, my a good friend of mine has was the trainer, but recently he has other commitments, so he's not going to be doing it anymore. So now we're going to need to
Hmm.
find trainers, and trainer fee is normally $400 a student, right? So if you're putting, you know,
Do
10
the
people,
math. Yeah.
right?
How
Yeah,
many volunteers do you guys currently have?
30.
Wow, good for you.
Yeah, yeah. Um, Honestly, it has gone down since we launched. So, background, the idea came into being. We registered in Alberta in September of 2022, but we were like, okay, then I had to build a team, right? Like, I got it registered, yes, but now I need volunteers to answer the phones. So, I gave myself a year to build that, like, have volunteers. So, September 2023 is when we launched our helpline. Our helpline is live since September. Um, but the volunteers since have gone down, right? Like sometimes
Commitments. Yeah.
you find out that this is not for you, right? This is very real, right? Like, yes, people call us when they need somebody to talk to, but people also call us when they're in crisis, right? It's very real. You are in the business of saving lives, right? So, um So some people find out, yeah, it's not for them, and which is fine. I'm totally fine with it. People have left. Um, so
Have
we
you
are.
had to take on the line for 24 hours at time sometimes or 12 hours?
Have I personally signed
Yeah.
up? Yeah, yeah, I signed up. Like when
No,
I
no.
when
Sometimes if there wasn't enough volunteers for that day, do you just take the line?
we have never had that issue
Okay,
yet
that's good.
where we didn't, because we do have enough volunteers to take the lines, right? I would like to have 300 volunteers, right?
Mm,
Everybody, like, not anywhere, people are not getting burnt out, right? But remember, our minimum is 16 hours a month, right? Do I always sign, and I am part of that 16, like I fulfilled that commitment of minimum of 16 hours. Normally it's more than that, but I have volunteers who have put in. We launched in September 25th, so we are coming up on 3 months, and I have volunteers who have put in almost 400 hours, right?
incredible.
Which is a lot of hours, right? So, um, yeah, so in 3 months, in less than 3 months, right now, I could tell you, yeah, we are close to some
Yeah.
volunteers putting in 400 hours, some volunteers putting in, you know, we have a little recognition program for our volunteers when they finish 200 hours and 400 hours and blah blah. And I just did recognition um 2 weeks ago for three volunteers who were over 200 hours, right? And then one of them was very close to 400 hours, right? So,
Mhm.
um, um, but yeah, that's within first 3 months.
And what does
So
boots on the ground mean itself? The phrase boots on the ground. Does that just mean so you're not falling down? It's you're standing up, boots on the
no,
ground?
like we are here, right? Like we are not sitting there in a planning phase, and we are not sitting there on a table and having putting our minds together and let's do this. No, boots on the ground. We are here now. We are ready to go.
Execute.
Yeah, we are executing, right?
Mm,
So in military terms, you plan an action, but that action is only a plan until boots hit the ground, right? Like so until
mm,
soldiers are on
yeah,
the ground.
on the ground. Okay, cool.
So
Well, thanks, bro, for your time today. I appreciate you, man.
for sure, brother. Thank you.
Okay, cheers.